Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, today we'll be taking a look at this no work, no pay. You already know is a labor-related matter. Well, I've got Mrs. Akpan, who is the Director, Trade Union Services and Industrial Relations from the Ministry of Labour and Employment. Thank you for coming on this morning, madam.
Thank you.
And then I've got on my far right, Comrade Wabba, President of Nigeria Labour Congress. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
Well, let me start with you, madam, about this no work, no pay rule. We already know Labour disagrees with this already. But why is the government deciding to implement this policy now?
Well, I want to say they're just implementing the policy now. The policy has been in existence since 2004. I think government is just trying to bring to the attention of the workforce the fact that there exists such a provision in the Trade Dispute Act so that they will abide by the provisions of the law.
But does that suggest that the government is trying to twist labor because of the ongoing negotiations going on?
No, no. You recall that we've had several trade disputes involving government and like Joesu, and in the course of that industrial action, government also stated that there is need to refer them to the provisions of the Trade Dispute Act that prohibits a strike action in the course of negotiation or bargaining. So I think they're just trying to bring to the attention of the workforce that there is such a law and help them to abide or take decision whether or not to abide.
And clearly, Comrade, Labour frowns at this.
Well, Chamberlain, let me try to put the facts correctly. The right to strike is a core trade union and human right. And that's why our laws recognize the right of a worker to a strike. That's what differentiates a slave from a worker. A worker can exercise that right that is provided in our law. And particularly, if you look at the following section, Section 41 of the Trade Dispute Act, provided condition precedent for a worker to proceed on strike, even in essential services. And Section 42 provides condition precedent for a worker that is working in areas that are dangerous to proceed on strike by issuing 15 days notice. In fact, the law said, notwithstanding anything that is provided in the law, that the worker can proceed on strike by giving this notice. It means that it's a fundamental right.
Yeah,
and
but Section 43?
This right, let me come to that. This right has been exercised from time immemorial. In fact, from the colonial era to the military era, even to democratic dispensation. So coming at this, the law had been there. It's there, and therefore, when you go to equity, you must also go with clean hands. First is that selectively, because it's a body of law, the Trade Union Act is a body of law. Even that Section 43, the preceding provision, that is 43B, said if a worker is also locked out, the worker is entitled to be paid. So why selectively, at this point in time, trying to emphasize a phrase in a law? I agree with you with smell rats, but workers cannot be deterred from exercising this fundamental right, especially where the right of a worker is denied. So clearly speaking, I think it's like flocking a dead horse. The law has been there. And clearly speaking also, like in circumstances where there is a collective bargaining agreement, which in labor law is like sacrosanct, and employer deliberately refuse to implement those collective bargaining, and we have many of them. That is what leads to strike. Strike is not a tea party. Strike is a matter of last resort, and that is what differentiates a worker from a slave. And therefore, we must recognize these dynamics and facts in order to situate the argument. And therefore, this time around, even to, I'm just at a loss, because if it is a law, then it's a gazette actually more important and higher than a law, because it's a provision of a law.
All right, we'll hope to come to that.
So that's the argument that I think I'm a loss at what it's out to achieve, because this has been circularized severally. Even in 2016, you remember, there's a circular that
16,
was issued
17,
service-wide. And from time immemorial, that have not deterred workers from exercising their right to strike. It's not illegal for any worker to go on strike. It's not illegal.
You're itching to respond.
That's the fact that we need to understand.
Go ahead.
I'm itching to respond because the law provides for the makes provision for trade dispute resolutions. Now, if you are in the course of collective bargaining and you have not exhausted collective bargaining. You haven't reached a consensus. It's not expected that any party should embark on industrial action or a strike. If you do so, it's an unfair labor practice on the part of the union. And I think Comrade President should realize that as of now, there's still deliberations and negotiations going on regarding the minimum wage. And so workers are not expected to embark on industrial action while that is ongoing. It's when it's concluded and you reach an agreement and perhaps the employer fails to implement his own part, that even then you don't automatically go on strike. You have to exhaust the dispute resolution mechanism as stipulated in the Trade Dispute Act.
So, comrade, this suggests that
it's trying to bend the fact. Let me try to put the fact into perspective. In most cases, strike arose when collective bargaining agreements are not respected. In the case of ASU, in the case of NASU and all the institutions in the education sector, and in the case of the joint health workers, this had been the scenario. And therefore, this is when strike usually comes in. But the first consideration of every union is dialogue. And social dialogue is well respected by all unions and workers. But where social dialogue also is frustrated or deliberately refusing to implement an agreement, the right of a worker to exercise that important right is given to him.
So that suggests that is the part that she's talking about. If there's a conversation, a discussion, negotiation going on already, why will Labour then decide to embark on strike, seemingly to force the hands of government?
Certainly, it's a tool that had been used from time immemorial to actually also assert the right of the worker. And in most cases, it's when negotiations are frustrated, like what she's referring to in the case of the minimum wage, which I'm sure you will raise. Yeah. It's not true that negotiation is ongoing. On the 4th and 5th of September, negotiation had been concluded and agreement reached. So the issue of just trying to twist fact, I think this is an opportunity to put the fact before the public. And also, I think in this circumstance, workers are then forced with no choice to try to enforce their right. Because if employer will be able to enforce his own right, workers should also have the right and the liberty to enforce their own right. This is the circumstance of strike. And that's why I say strike is not usually a tea party. Okay, it's not the first option.
I do remember
it's actually the last option.
Labour spoke up saying that all of those negotiations had been concluded. But much later, the Minister of Labour then addresses the press saying no agreement had been reached.
That's what I know is the fact. There is no agreement, no consensus. There are 3 positions as regards the minimum wage. And until an agreement is reached, we can't talk about it.
What are those 3 positions?
Well, I'm aware that federal government is offering 24,000. The state government are presenting 20,700. Then organized labor and organized private sector are proposing 30,000. So we have 3 positions. And so there is no consensus reached. We can't talk about embarking on an industrial action when there's no agreement.
Well, Chamberlain, let me say that this is absolutely false. The facts have been bended, and that's why I came with retinue of facts to present before the public. First is that despite the fact that at the committee level we agree that we shouldn't actually present some of those information until the report is submitted, but already I think the government side have put an information that is not correct before the public. And therefore, it beholds on us to put all the information before the public so that the truth will be known. The truth exalts a nation. Truth exalts people. When you bend the truth, then there will be no peace and stability, especially in industrial relations.
So what is the truth here?
So the truth matter is that on the 4th and 5th, if you remember, the meeting was convened only for one reason, to conclude its assignment and also agree on figure. This is the final document that was considered. This document is the 4 scenarios. In fact, it's a subcommittee headed by the Minister of Labour. 4 scenarios were presented because what happened is that the committee, in the course of its assignment, have sent out letters to all state governors, to all specialized agencies of government, to all social partners, including Labour, to submit memorandum on what they think should be the minimum wage, and it should be evidence-based. You recall that Labour submitted its position, and we quoted about 16,500, which was evidence-based. State governors submitted their positions. Each state, in fact, I have it here, 20 states submitted memo. I can quote, you can look at it with their headed paper, Office of the Governor. You can see from a state submitted. And I can quote 3 figures. Kano submitted 30,600. Jigawa submitted 32,500. Borno submitted 27,000. And all those states submitted figures. Some states said whatever is agreed, they are going to pay. Organized labor, as I said, and organized private sector also submitted figure. Federal government came with their figure much more later. All those figures were then given to a committee to come up with a proposal. And the committee came with 4 scenarios. The first scenario is 35,785. The second scenario is 37,768. The third scenario, 36,000. The fourth scenario is 38,580. This is the document. The chairperson of the committee, which is supposed to be neutral, the former head of service of the Federation, Ama Pepe, who also was a minister, is still alive, to confirm what I'm saying. And therefore, this is the fact. So all of these figures that came in, went to this committee, they came with this report. And this report was considered precisely on the 5th, which was on Friday. This was put before the whole House. It was debated. In fact, Labour's first position is to say that let us take the first scenario, which is 38,000, let us make it a round figure of 40,000. In the course of deliberation, because collective